Jake Mitchell took his usual walk along the beach as the morning sun began to rise over the Oregon coast. He did this every day before going to work as a biologist at the Marine Research Station. Jake loved his job studying ocean life, and over the years he had seen all kinds of strange things wash up on the beach. There were dead jellyfish, weird fish from the deep sea, and even pieces of old shipwrecks. But what he found that morning was nothing like anything he had ever seen before. Jake's heart skipped a beat when he saw a creature lying still between two big rocks in a tide pool. It was about the same size as a big dog, maybe a German shepherd, but that was the only thing it had in common with animals on Earth. In the early morning light, the thing's scales looked like they were glowing and changing colors. They would change from deep purple to bright electric blue in the blink of an eye. The thing had 6 legs, and each one ended in what looked like sharp claws that could move in and out. Jake was most interested in its eyes, though. It was like someone had taken diamonds and broken them into 1,000 pieces. These eyes were watching him with an intelligence that made his spine tingle. Jake stepped closer, and the wet sand crunched under his boots. At that point he knew the creature was in big trouble. It was breathing quickly and shallowly, like an animal that is in a lot of pain. There was a nasty wound on one side of its body, a deep cut that was leaking some kind of fluid. But this blood wasn't normal. It looked more like liquid light, like someone had melted stars and they were slowly dripping out of this creature's body. "Jesus," Jake said softly as he knelt down next to the dying animal. His scientific training told him to be careful and stay away, but his heart told him to do something else. This thing was hurting and needed help. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Tom, his boss from the research station, running toward him. Tom was an older man who had worked with marine life for 30 years. Most of the time he stayed calm. But when he saw what Jake was kneeling next to, his face went white. "Get away from that thing right now, Jake," Tom said, his voice shaking with fear. "We need to get in touch with someone. I don't know if it's the government or the military, but we can't mess with this. Tom, take a look at it." Jake didn't move from where he was. "It hurts a lot," he said. "Jake, it's not from this world. Check it out. That doesn't come from Earth. We don't know what it could do or what diseases it might have." Jake was staring at it. He saw the 6 legs, the glowing scales, and the eyes that couldn't be real. He saw all the things that said danger and unknown. He saw a living thing that was in pain, scared, and dying on a cold beach far from where it came from, though. He saw something in those diamond eyes that didn't look angry, but rather hopeful. Jake said quietly but firmly, "I'm taking it home." "Are you out of your mind?" The pitch of Tom's voice went up. "That thing could be harmful. It could kill you. We don't know anything about it." "I guess that means I'm crazy." Jake carefully took off his jacket and slowly, gently wrapped it around the creature. He thought it might bite him or scratch him with those sharp claws. Instead, it made a sound that was like wind chimes in a storm. It was kind of musical but also sad. It didn't struggle at all as he gently picked it up and held it. The creature was heavier than he thought it would be, and it was much warmer than any fish or sea animal he had ever touched. Tom kept complaining and following Jake to his truck, saying things like, "This isn't how things are done," and "You could lose your job and go to jail." But Jake had already made up his mind. He drove home with the creature in his jacket on the passenger seat, and those broken diamond eyes watched him the whole way. Jake lived in a small cottage near the beach, but his garage was big. He took out all of his tools and fishing gear and made what he could only call a hospital room. He put the animal on some old blankets and was finally able to see the wound clearly. It was deep and still leaking that weird glowing liquid. Jake didn't know what to do. He couldn't really call a vet for an alien. He did everything he could. He washed the wound with warm water, put a clean cloth over it, and did his best to make the creature feel better. The first night was hard. The creature's breathing got worse and it made sounds that broke Jake's heart. He sat on the cold garage floor all night, keeping an eye on things. Jake thought it was over when the creature stopped breathing for a few seconds, but then it would gasp and start breathing again. Jake was tired by morning, but the creature was still alive. That felt like a win. He began to call her Luna. He didn't even know if the creature was a boy or a girl, but Luna felt right. He made a plan for the next few days. Every morning he would go to the market and buy fresh fish to feed Luna by hand. At first she wouldn't eat, but eventually she got hungry. She would gently take the fish from his hand, and her sharp teeth never even touched his skin. She seemed to know he was trying to help. Jake was amazed that the wound was starting to heal because the glowing fluid stopped leaking and the gash slowly closed up. It healed quickly, whatever it was. Luna became stronger and began to pay more attention to Jake. Those eyes were always on him. He could feel her looking at him when he worked on his laptop in the garage. When he talked to her, like when he told her about his day or what he was doing, Her head would tilt as if she were really listening. Luna could stand on all 6 legs by the end of the first week. In the second week she was walking around the garage and looking at everything. Something amazing happened by the 3rd week. Jake was tired from another long day and was sitting in an old chair when Luna walked over and lay down next to him. Then she started to make a low, rumbling purr that shook the floor in his bones. It was the happiest sound he had ever heard. Everything changed in week 4. Luna began to follow Jake everywhere. She wanted to go inside with him. Whenever he sat down on the couch, she would curl up next to him. She even learned to play by chasing after the balls he threw and bringing them back. The scary alien predator was acting like a big puppy. Beth, his neighbor, came over one afternoon and almost had a heart attack when she saw Luna lying on Jake's couch. "Have you lost your mind, Jake Mitchell?" Beth stood in the doorway with her eyes wide open. "That thing could kill you while you sleep." Jake looked at Luna, who was lying on her back with all 6 legs in the air and making happy chirping sounds while Jake scratched her belly. "Yes," Jake said with a smile. "Completely scary." Jake knew though that this couldn't last forever. Luna didn't come from Earth. Someone, somewhere was probably trying to find her. Jake's life was going to change in ways he couldn't even imagine when they found her. Empress Kara was alone in her throne room, looking out at the endless sea of stars. She was on the other side of the galaxy, thousands of light years away from Earth. The room was huge, with ceilings that looked like they touched the sky and walls that looked like polished obsidian but glowed with a soft light from inside. But Kara didn't see any of it. She had been standing at this window for hours, looking at the stars and hoping against hope that the answer would somehow show up in the dark. Her eyes looked empty, like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. That was true. Every night, she would lie in her room and feel the emptiness where there should have been a connection or a presence. It felt like she had lost a piece of her own soul. She heard footsteps behind her, the slow, careful steps of someone who didn't want to scare her. Slowly, Lord Garrett, her chancellor and oldest friend, came up to her. He had been with her since she was a child, helped her deal with the dangerous world of imperial politics, and stayed by her side through wars and peace treaties. But even he didn't seem to know how to make her feel better now. "Your Majesty," he said in a soft voice. "The search goes on. Our ships are looking at every system, planet, and moon. We have search teams in 17 different star sectors." Kara didn't look back. "It's been 4 months, Garrett." "I know, my lady." His voice also had pain in it. He had known Aurora since she was a little Vexa, not much bigger than a house cat. 20 years ago he had seen Kara and Aurora's bonding ceremony, which made them connected. He also hurt when he lost Aurora, but in a different way. Kara's hand went to her left wrist without her even thinking about it. There was a mark there that glowed faintly under her skin. It looked like a tattoo, but it was something much more important. The mark of bonding. When a member of the VRYN royal family bonded with their Vexa, they all got one. The mark was meant to help them feel their Vexa's presence, know how they were feeling and tell if they were in danger. But Kara's mark had been quiet for 4 months now. Empty and cold. The VRYN people didn't think of the Vexa as just animals or pets. They were a lot more than that. These animals were the top predators on the VRYN homeworld. They were smart and deadly, and the royal family had been friends with them for thousands of years. It wasn't just about teaching an animal. It was a bond of the soul, a connection that went beyond words. Your Vexa was your friend, your protector, and your other half. Some VRYN philosophers thought that a person and their Vexa had the same soul, but it was split between 2 bodies. You felt like you lost a part of yourself when you lost your Vexa. But for an empress, it was even worse than that. It was a political disaster. "The council whispers," Kara said in a low voice, still looking at the stars. "I hear them in the hallways and see them talking in the corners. They think I don't understand what they're saying." Garrett got up and stood next to her. "The council's opinion doesn't matter. People say that an empress who doesn't have her Vexa can't rule." Kara's voice was flat and emotionless, but Garrett could hear the pain in it. "They say it's a sign from my ancestors that I'm not good enough anymore. That the Empire needs a stronger leader. They can whisper all they want. We'll look for Aurora. I promise you." Kara finally looked at him and Garrett's heart broke a little. He had never seen this look on her face in all the years he had known her, through all the hard times, fights and losses. It was out of desperation. Not covered up or hidden. The Empress, the most powerful woman in the Empire, seemed confused. "We've looked everywhere, Garrett. In every place. We've looked at every planet in the nearby systems. We have talked to every ship that was in the area when our diplomatic shuttle was attacked. We've offered rewards so big that half of the galaxy's traders are looking for her." Her voice broke a little. "Where else can we search?" Garrett was quiet for a moment, then he said carefully, We haven't looked everywhere yet. Where? That old planet in the Sol system. The one the natives call Earth. Kara's eyes got smaller. I thought our scouts had already cleared that system months ago. Yes, they did a basic scan. Garrett pulled up a holographic display from his wrist device. A small blue and green planet appeared and started to spin slowly. But it was just a quick flyby. The scouts said it was a backwater world. The main species there has only just begun to learn how to travel through space. They still use rockets that use chemicals. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. The scouts said that a Vexa couldn't be hidden there because the planet doesn't have the technology to hide a Vexa's energy signature. So why do you want to talk about it? That's probably why we should look there more closely. Garrett made the hologram bigger so that it showed the oceans and continents on Earth. Your Majesty, think about it. When our diplomatic shuttle was attacked near that system, the escape pods flew in all directions. We got most of them back. But one pod was broken and its tracking beacon stopped working. The automatic navigation would have taken it to the closest planet with a good atmosphere. Kara looked at the picture of Earth. Do you think Aurora crashed there? It could be. The air on the planet is breathable, the water is liquid, and the gravity is similar to that of many other worlds we live on. If a damaged pod had to land somewhere, that planet would be the obvious choice. Garrett stopped. But here's the thing. The scouts didn't look at the surface. They just did a high orbital sweep to find Vexa energy signatures. If Aurora was hurt, unconscious, or weak, her signature might not have been strong enough to be seen from space. That we need to search it the right way now. Send the whole fleet. Look at every inch of that planet. Your Majesty, I must advise you to be careful. These humans are the natives of that world. They are primitive but they are not dumb. It could cause panic if we show up with a fleet of warships. Some people might even see it as an act of war. Kara's face hardened, and for a moment Garrett saw the Empress instead of the sad woman. I don't care if it makes people freak out. It doesn't matter to me if they think it's an invasion. That planet might have Aurora, and I will look in every mountain, ocean, and city if I have to. But the Council can say whatever they want. I am still the Empress. I still give the orders. She turned back to the viewport, and her reflection looked like a ghost in the clear material. Send our fastest ships to Earth. Tell them to look at everything. If you need to, use ground teams. Talk to the natives. Show them pictures of Aurora. Someone on that planet must have seen something. Garrett bowed down. Your Majesty, as you wish. What if we don't find anything though? What if Aurora isn't there? For a long time, Kara didn't say anything. When she finally said something, it was barely a whisper. Next, I'll look for the next planet. And the next one. And the next one after that. If I have to, I'll look in every world in this galaxy. Aurora is out there, Garrett. I can sense it. The bond may be quiet, but it is still strong. She is still alive. I know she is. Then we'll look for her. Garrett said it with more confidence than he really had. For months felt like a long time. Vexa, no matter how strong and tough they were, had limits. If Aurora had been hurt badly and crashed on a primitive world with no medical help, her chances of survival were slim. But he didn't say any of that. He bowed again and left to do what he had to do, leaving Kara alone with the stars and her fading hope. Jake was in his backyard with Luna on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon, teaching her a new game. He had bought a bright red frisbee from the store and was trying to get her to catch it in the air. Luna was getting pretty good at it. Her 6 legs let her jump and twist in ways that seemed to defy gravity. She would jump up, grab the frisbee with her mouth and bring it back to Jake, making the happy chirping sounds that he had come to love. Jake threw the frisbee again and watched as Luna ran after it with her amazing speed. He was laughing at how crazy his life had gotten in the last few months when something made him look up at the sky. And that's when everything changed. The sky just broke open. There was no other way to put it. There were ships in the sky one second and normal blue sky with a few clouds the next. A lot of them. Jake had never seen planes like these before. They were smooth and beautiful, and the material they were made of seemed to shimmer and change in the sunlight. They were also very big, with some being as big as football stadiums. The spacecraft that Jake had seen launch on TV looked like cheap toys next to these. The ships were just hanging there in the sky over the Pacific Northwest, silent and threatening, like a storm that was about to break. Luna let go of the frisbee and made a noise that Jake had never heard her make before. It was almost like a whimper, but it was deeper and more complicated. She was staring at the ships with her big bright eyes. Jake's phone started going crazy in his pocket. Ringing, buzzing, and alerts after alerts. He took it out with shaking hands and saw emergency broadcasts flashing on the screen. Government warnings telling people to stay inside. Notifications about an alien fleet showing up over North America. Tom, Beth, and people he barely knew were all texting him all at once, asking if he was okay, if he saw the ships and what was going on. Then he heard cars screech to a halt in front of his house. Doors of cars slamming. Heavy footsteps running. Someone started banging on his front door so hard that it sounded like they were trying to break it down. "Hey, Jake Mitchell. Open this door right now. This is the FBI." Jake's heart was racing in his chest. Luna moved closer to him and pressed against his leg. He could feel her shaking. Or maybe it was him who was shaking. He didn't know anymore. He walked to the front door, which felt like rubber, and opened it. In his front yard there were at least 12 people. People in dark suits with FBI badges, both men and women. People in military clothes with guns. People in lab coats with tools he didn't know how to use. They all looked scared, angry, and stressed out at the same time. A woman in a dark suit came up. "Jake Mitchell, you need to come with us right away. We think you have something that belongs to them." She pointed up at the ships in the sky. For Jake, the next 6 hours were like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. They took him and Luna to a temporary command center that had been set up at a military base nearby. There were people all over the place, running around, yelling orders, and looking at computer screens. Scientists kept trying to get close to Luna to study her, but she only let Jake get close. She stayed close to his side and growled softly whenever someone got too close. Then the real aliens showed up. Jake had seen aliens in movies and on TV his whole life, but nothing could have prepared him for the real thing. They were very tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet, which is much taller than people. It looked like their dark skin absorbed the light around them instead of reflecting it. They moved so gracefully that it looked like they were floating. Their voices sounded like music, like a bunch of instruments playing at once. Jake couldn't understand what they were saying until someone gave him a small device to wear on his wrist that translated their language. One of the aliens said, "The Vexa is here," and Jake couldn't figure out what they meant by that. "We can sense her. Where is she?" It seemed like the whole room changed before anyone could answer. Everyone suddenly stood up straighter, moved aside, and made room for someone important. Then she came in. Jake knew right away that this woman was a member of the royal family. You could tell right away. She wore clothes that looked like they were made of liquid metal and moved and flowed with every move. Her skin absorbed light like the other aliens, but there was something else about her that made Jake want to step back. An aura of power and authority. She was surrounded by guards in armor that hummed with some kind of energy. Their hands were close to weapons that looked like they could easily turn him to dust. But what really got to Jake were her eyes. They looked tired, sad, and hopeless all at once. The alien woman walked through the command center like she owned it. She looked around until her eyes landed on the door to the garage, where Jake and Luna had been waiting. She walked toward it without asking anyone for permission. The guards, officials, and scientists all rushed to catch up with her. She walked into the garage and stood still. "Jake," she whispered, and he could hear so much feeling in that one word that it hurt his chest. Luna had been sleeping next to Jake's feet, but when she heard that voice, she woke up. Her clear eyes got big, and Jake had never heard her make that noise before. It was complicated and layered, like a mix of happiness, sadness, and recognition. It was the sound of someone finding a loved one after being lost for a long time. Jake thought Luna would run to this woman. Thought she would jump forward and be with whoever this person was to her. He was already heartbroken because he knew what this meant. He didn't own Luna. She had never been. Someone else owned her. Someone who had been looking for her and who clearly loved her. But Luna didn't go to the alien woman. Instead, she got up and stood right in front of Jake. Her body was tense and ready to fight. She stood between Jake and everyone else in the room. Even without words, the message was very clear. "This is mine. You are not taking him." Everyone in the room stopped talking. One of the guards spoke quickly in that musical language. Jake's wrist translator started to work. "Not possible. Vexa does not turn down their bond. This can't be happening. There must be a mistake." Everyone stopped talking right away when the alien woman, the Empress, raised one hand. Jake couldn't figure out what she was thinking as she looked at Luna. Maybe shock, not believing, and something else that looked a lot like sadness. "She has chosen," the Empress said softly, and her translator made her words sound scary. "Aurora has picked someone else." Luna pushed harder against Jake's legs, making a deep, low-pitched purr that shook his bones. Jake was scared to death and had no idea what was going on. He reached down and put his hand on Luna's head. It was a natural gesture that was both protective and comforting. "I don't understand what's going on," Jake said, his voice shaking more than he wanted it to. "But she won't go anywhere she doesn't want to go. I won't let you take her if she doesn't want to go." The answer came right away and was scary. All of the guards in the room moved at once. They all raised their weapons and aimed them straight at Jake. Around the barrels, energy buzzed and crackled. Jake was pretty sure that if they shot him, there wouldn't be enough of him left to bury. But he didn't take his hand off of Luna's head. He was going to spend his last moments protecting the creature he had come to love. Jake shut his eyes and waited for it to be over. He could hear the alien weapons charging up and feel Luna shaking against his legs. He kept his hand on her head, gently stroking the scales that had become so familiar to him over the past few months. At least he would die protecting something he loved if this was how it ended. Then a voice rang out, sharp and commanding, with an authority that made everyone in the room stop. "You dare to threaten my Vex's chosen?" The Empress was there. Her voice broke the tension in the room like a knife through butter. Jake opened his eyes and saw her standing there with one hand raised and a look of rage on her face. The guards looked at each other, unsure, but they slowly, very slowly, put down their guns. The humming energy went away. Jake let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. Jake had to fight every instinct that told him to back away when the Empress came closer. She walked with such grace, like a predator, with each step carefully planned out. Luna's muscles tightened like springs, but she didn't attack. She just watched the Empress come closer with those diamond eyes, and a low rumble came from deep in her chest. The Empress did something Jake never thought she would do when she was only a few feet away. She knelt down so that she was at eye level with him. Jake could see up close that her eyes weren't just one color, they changed and shifted like oil on water. He saw something in those eyes that surprised him. Sadness. Sadness that hurts deep down. "How?" she asked, and her voice was soft, almost kind. Jake blinked, not sure what to think. "What do you mean?" "Vex a bond for life," the Empress said, and Jake could tell she was in pain. "When they are very young, almost babies, they pick their partner. That bond will never break once it is made. Doesn't change. Not until death." Jake's heart hurt because she looked at Luna with such longing. "Aurora was mine. We became close when she was only a few months old. We've been together for 20 years. For 20 years we fought, lived and shared everything. But now she stands with you, protects you and picks you over me." Jake had a hard time swallowing. "I had no idea. I just saw her on the beach. She was dying. And you took her in?" The Empress looked like she didn't understand. "Vexa are top predators, human. Nature made them to hunt and kill. Their claws can cut through the hull of a starship. Their teeth can break through armor that has been strengthened. One Vexa can easily kill a dozen trained warriors. You didn't have any weapons, armor, or other protection. But you let her stay in your house. Why?" Jake said it again, "Because she was dying," and he said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "What else could I do? Just let her suffer there?" Another alien stepped forward before the Empress could answer. Jake could tell this one was older because his face had more lines and he carried himself with a certain weight. The translator on Jake's wrist said he was Lord Garrett, the Chancellor. "Your Majesty, maybe the person just doesn't get how we do things," Garrett said. After that he looked at Jake. "Hey, let me ask you something. How do your people take care of Vexa?" Jake looked like he didn't understand. "Race? I didn't bring her up. She is not a child. I just took care of her." "What do you mean by took care of her?" Jake shrugged, feeling strange because all these important aliens were looking at him. "I gave her food. When I found her, she was in a lot of pain, so I cleaned her wound and made sure she was comfortable. She had nightmares for the first few nights, probably because of something bad that happened to her, so I slept on the floor of the garage next to her to keep her from being scared. We began doing things together when she got better. I'd walk her on the beach. We would play games. Normal stuff." The silence that came after was deep. Everyone in the room who wasn't from Earth was looking at Jake like he had just said something crazy. "You were with her?" Garrett's voice sounded strangled, and even the translator seemed to have trouble getting across how shocked he was. "You played games with a top predator?" "Yes. Mostly fetch. She really likes frisbees." "There's no way this can happen," one of the guards said. "Vexa learned through dominance tests. Through fighting and strength tests. You show that you are worthy by beating them in battle and showing that you are stronger and more powerful. That's how respect is built." Jake felt something hot go through him. "Anger." He said, "That's terrible. You're saying you want to hurt them and fight them to make a point? That's not being respectful. That's abuse." Before the guard could say anything, the Empress raised her hand again. Her face had changed. There was something in her eyes now that was thoughtful and almost curious. "Show me," she said. "Show me what you did with Aurora. I want to know." Jake took his phone out of his pocket with shaking hands. The picture of Luna sleeping on his couch with all 6 legs stretched out and looking completely relaxed and happy was his background photo. The Empress looked at it for a long time. Jake showed her everything over the course of the next hour. He had taken a lot of videos and pictures of Luna's recovery and their time together over the past few months. There was a video of the first time Luna ate from his hand, showing how gentle she was even though her teeth were very sharp. Videos of her learning to play fetch and having a great time chasing the frisbee. Pictures of her curled up on his couch during a thunderstorm. She was scared of the loud noises, so he sat with her and petted her until she calmed down. There was even a funny video from 2 weeks ago when Luna somehow got into his kitchen pantry and knocked over a jar of peanut butter. The sticky stuff had gotten on all of her scales and she looked so confused and sad. Jake didn't get mad. He just laughed and spent an hour gently cleaning her off while talking to her and telling her it was okay that accidents happen. The Empress watched all of the videos without making a sound. Jake couldn't read her face, but he saw her hand keep going to her wrist and touching the glowing mark he had seen earlier. Lord Garrett and the other aliens watched too, and Jake could see that they were confused and shocked. The Empress sat back after the videos were over. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just looked at Luna, who was still pressed protectively against Jake's legs. "I commanded her," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I told her what to do. I trusted her to be strong in battle. She fought for me, kept me safe, and served me faithfully." She looked up at Jake and saw that she was crying. Tears that are real. But did I ever make her happy? Did I ever just sit with her because she was afraid? Did I ever play with her just for fun? "Your Majesty," Garrett began to protest, "Vexa doesn't need things like that. Yes, they are bonded friends, but they are also fighters. They don't need, everything needs happiness, Garrett," the Empress said. "All living things deserve to have happy times." When she stood up and looked at Jake, she respected him. "This person showed my Vexa something I never did. Being kind without expecting anything in return. Care without being in charge. Love without conditions." She turned to look Jake straight in the eye. "Hey, let me ask you something, human. What would you do if I told Aurora to come back to me? What if I told her to leave you and come back to where she belongs?" Jake's throat was tight. He looked down at Luna, this amazing animal that had become such a big part of his life. He felt pain in his chest at the thought of losing her. But he knew what the right thing to do was. He said in a low voice, "I would respect her choice. I would never stop her from going with you. It would break my heart, but I can't keep her. She is her own person. She gets to pick." Luna made a small, sad sound and pressed even closer to Jake. Her purr shook his whole body. For the first time since she came into the room, the Empress smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it was real. "You really don't get what you've done, do you, human?" Jake never thought he would leave Earth, let alone go to the other side of the galaxy. But 3 weeks after that tense meeting in the garage, he was in the Grand Council chamber of the VRN Empire's capital world, wearing formal clothes that had been made for him but still didn't fit quite right. The jacket was a little too tight in the shoulders and the pants were a little too long. He felt like a kid at a wedding wearing his dad's suit. The council chamber was stunning. The walls were made of a crystal-like material that caught the light from 3 different suns and turned it into rainbows that danced on the floor. Jake couldn't see the top of the ceiling because it was so high. It seemed to disappear into real clouds. The most important people in the VRYN Empire sat in rows of seats that curved around a central platform. Lords and ladies wore clothes that looked like they were made of light, jewelry that hummed with energy, and their faces were marked with symbols of rank and power. And they were all looking at Jake. Luna, who the Empress kept calling Aurora, was still pressed against his side like she had been for months. Empress Kara herself stood on the other side, tall and royal in robes that flowed like water made of stars. She had told Jake to stand with her instead of in a separate area for guests. She said he was a part of this story and should be the main character. The gathered nobles talked quietly to each other, and their musical language made a sound like an orchestra getting ready for a concert. Jake's translator device helped him understand words and phrases. People. Old-fashioned. Never before. Not possible. Most of them didn't seem happy that he was there. Lord Garrett, who was at the front of the room, raised his hands and asked for quiet. The whispers slowly stopped until the room was quiet enough to hear the soft hum of the lights above. Garrett said, "The Empress will speak," and his voice carried across the huge room without any need for microphones or speakers. Kara stepped forward and it felt like she filled the whole room. Her voice was clear and strong when she spoke, like the voice of someone who had ruled an empire for decades and wasn't afraid of anything. She started by saying, "For generations we have bonded with Vexa through tests of strength. through fighting and being in charge. We have ordered them around, trusted their strength in battle, and used them as signs of our strength and power." She stopped for a moment to let her words sink in. "A man named Jake Mitchell showed us we were wrong." The chamber quickly filled with whispers of protest. Jake saw nobles standing up, shaking their heads and looking angry. But Kara just raised one hand and everyone in the room stopped talking. She had complete control over the power. Kara went on, "Let me tell you a story. 4 months ago, pirates attacked our diplomatic shuttle. My Vexa Aurora got lost in the chaos. Her escape pod was broken. She crashed on a planet called Earth, which we thought was too simple and not worth our time. She was hurt badly. She should have died alone on that strange beach." Kara looked at Jake and her eyes were warm. Instead, she found someone who asked for nothing but gave everything. This person found a creature he had never seen before, a predator that could have easily killed him. His first thought was not of fear, profit, or using her as a weapon. He first thought of being kind. He brought her home. He gave her food. He stayed up all night with her when she had a fever and was out of her mind. He gave her safety. Jake's translator told him that Kara said love, but the VON word seemed to have more weight and layers of meaning than the simple English translation could show. Kara said, "Aurora has formed a dual bond," and Jake heard gasps all over the room. "A thing that isn't in any of our histories or ancient texts. She is still connected to me, her first friend. But because of Jake's care and compassion, she has made a second bond that is just as strong. And in doing so, my relationship with her has changed, not gotten weaker. Strengthened." Kara turned to face the whole room, and her voice rang out with authority. "I suggest that Jake Mitchell be the first official ambassador from Earth to the VRYN Empire. And I think we should send our own representatives to Earth to learn from them. To learn the ways of kindness and compassion that we have lost." A lord who was old stood up from his seat near the front. His robes were more ornate than most, which showed that he was of high rank and old nobility. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, these people are very simple. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. They haven't been to many other planets. What could they possibly teach us that we don't already know?" Jake's face turned red. He was used to feeling out of place, but being called primitive to his face in front of hundreds of aliens was a new experience. He opened his mouth, unsure of what he was going to say, and then closed it again. Who did he think he was to talk here? But then he felt Luna push against his leg and heard her chirp of encouragement, which somehow gave him strength. "May I speak?" Jake asked, his voice sounding small in the big room. But the translator made his words clear. "You're right. We are not as advanced as you are. We can't go faster than light. We can't make ships like yours. We're still fighting over borders and resources." He took a deep breath. "But we can show you that strength isn't just about having power. You can learn from us that being kind can sometimes be the bravest thing you can do. That every living thing, no matter how strange, dangerous, or different, deserves kindness, respect, and a chance to be happy." Luna chirped loudly in agreement and rubbed her head against his hand. Some of the nobles laughed at that, but Jake wasn't sure if they were laughing with him or at him. The vote that came after was long and full of arguments. Jake had to stand there for more than 2 hours while nobles argued in their musical language. Some people were angry at the idea of learning from primitives. Some people were interested. Some people really seemed to care about the story of Jake and Luna. In the end, the proposal passed, but not by a large margin. Everything changed 3 months later. The first group of people from Earth came to the VRYN capital world. The VRYN thought that diplomats and politicians would come, people in suits with briefcases full of trade agreements and treaties. Instead, Earth sent doctors who were experts in animal psychology and rehabilitation. They sent teachers who taught how to be emotionally intelligent and empathetic. They even sent a dog trainer named Lisa from Colorado. She had worked with rescued animals for 30 years and taught people how to build relationships based on trust instead of fear. More than 100 VRYN nobles who owned Vexa came to Lisa's first workshop on what she called positive reinforcement training. This middle-aged woman in jeans and a simple shirt stood in front of them and taught an empire of advanced aliens that you could train an apex predator with treats and praise instead of fighting and being dominant. At first, the VRYN didn't believe it. After that, they saw what happened. Vexa, who had been aggressive and unpredictable, became calm and focused. Vexa, who had been afraid and respectful of their friends, started to really care about them. It wasn't an instant change, but it was real. And Jake Mitchell, an Oregon marine biologist who just wanted to save a dying animal on the beach, became the most unlikely ambassador in human history. He spent some time on Earth and some time in the VRYN capital, always with Luna by his side. He taught people how to be kind. He talked to Vryn nobles about how to take better care of their Vexa. He built a bridge between two very different cultures. Empress Kara was there for everything. She went to every workshop, learned every skill, and changed the way she talked to Luna completely. And Jake saw something amazing. Kara's bond with Luna grew stronger as she learned to be kind and loving. The Empress who ruled with strength and authority found that ruling with heart could be even more powerful. The news spread across the galaxy. At first, it was just rumors and stories that sounded too weird to be true. Someone who had tamed an Empress's Vexa with nothing but kindness. A simple species teaching a powerful empire how to be kind. But as more species sent people to see the changes in the Vryn Empire, the stories were proven true. The way people saw humans across the galaxy changed almost overnight. People no longer thought of them as primitive people stuck on their little blue planet. They became known as the species that remembered something important that many advanced civilizations had forgotten. That everyone, no matter how strong, dangerous, or strange they were, deserved to be treated with kindness. That love and compassion were not weaknesses, but the strongest forces in the universe. Other empires began to reach out to Earth because they were interested in these humans and their strange way of thinking. They signed trade deals. Exchanges of culture began. For the first time in its history, Earth was at the center of a revolution in how species treated each other. It all began when one man saw a dying animal on the beach and chose to help. Jake still lived in his little house by the Oregon coast when he was on Earth. Every morning he still walked on the beach. But now he sometimes walked with Luna on one side and Empress Kara on the other. They were two very different people who had both learned that the best relationships are based on love, trust, and kindness, not strength or power. The galaxy would never be the same again. Jake Mitchell, who had never wanted to be special, important, or famous, had shown many civilizations that even the smallest acts of kindness could make a big difference.